Today I am going to discuss Anna Stewart's findings on Lydia Maria Child's revision of an excerpt from Harriet Jacobs' Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl to better suit her own audience and achieve her differing goals. Having read some excerpts from the 1861 version of Incidents, you know that it is a slave narrative written under Jacobs' pseudonym Linda Brent. She narrates her life story to readers as a cultural work to promote the idea of the abolition of slavery and how especially brutal it was for women. Slave narrations were written mainly for Northern readers in order to obtain sympathies. But what happens to a work like this when slavery is abolished? This is where Lydia Maria Childs comes in with her idea of the Freedmen's Book. Childs was an active abolitionist who during Reconstruction believed recently freed slaves needed something as a guide. The purpose of her book was to improve literacy and encourage struggling former slaves who were not the original audience of Jacobs. The text was altered to fit the perspective of readers after the Civil War, which changed the whole goal of the work. Childs included inspiring stories of Black people overcoming adversity to prove to the readers that they themselves can also achieve greatness once they learn to read and become a part of their surrounding societies by encompassing domestic stability and social obligation. Among many other authors writing on a variety of subjects, Child herself wrote practical things like hygiene and ladylike behavior. One of her goals in writing the Freedmen's Book was to enforce typical gender roles, which you will see in examples I will show you later. She included excerpts written by Black people and former slaves as well. The names of the Black contributors to the book are marked by asterisks in the table of contents and became a site of racial national pride. But changing those stories without asking proper permission couldn't have made Black writers very proud. Jacobs' excerpt, The Good Grandmother, was transformed in Child's book to address an opposite audience for a different purpose. The focus is changed from Linda Brent to her grandmother and then emphasized productivity and moral Republican motherhood, even though Jacobs saw those things as a double standard for enslaved women. The first part of the story that was changed was in a scene where the youngest one of a slave woman's children was sold outside of the recently deceased master's family. Jacobs mentions his age and how much he was sold for. Child took this out to point out that a person has value through their work habits, not as property. The next altered part comes when the son, Benjamin, is older and is captured and kept prisoner after trying to run away. In Jacob's version, the passage is more about the son and his hate for his master and how he will never be humble before him. Child's rewrite is more focused on Jacob's grandmother's response to the situation and her being so good in patience, qualities Child focused on throughout the Freedmen's Book. Jacobs writes of the mother's extreme pain using imagery such as bloodshot eyes and groans. This description and use of exclamation points are used to make the most likely white audience of incidents feel uncomfortable. In the Freedman's version, Child uses third person and simpler text to portray a practical response, not a helpless grieving mother, but one with goals to achieve, which include raising money to buy back her son. Child focuses on the entrepreneurial nature of the grandmother and how hard she worked to earn $300 through baking. The grandmother then lends this to her mistress, who never repays her, but instead of focusing on this, Child focuses on the fact that the grandmother has raised this money on her own. She also changed the phrase old servant to faithful old servant to make a biblical allusion. Child adds the modifier her to Jacob's words perseverance and industry, indicating that those are qualities the grandmother possesses by having strong work ethic and social virtue. These domestic literacy narratives were nationalistic in trying to produce social norms to help what they thought of as a needy lower class. Reconstruction was a time of defining gender roles, not just racial ones. Many people agree that after civil wars, since the labor roles are sometimes switched, public figures and writers will promote traditional gender roles. The grandmother in The Good Grandmother was seen as a spiritually strong and inspiring woman in Child's rewrite to enforce these ideals. The revising of Harriet Jacobs' incidents in the Freedmen's Book is an example of how literary works can change through time as their purpose and audience changes with circumstances of the real world.